I'm gonna have that awkward thing where
Yep. It's tradition now.
the traditional awkward start where I can't find your channel.
I know patience.
There we go. Okay, hang on. Can I just like, can I copy a link from there? This is like technology 101.
Hello. If anyone's watching, hello. I hope everyone's having a great start to their new year. I spent my New Year's Eve knitting on the couch. And then I went outside. I went outside around like about 10 minutes after midnight because I left my my phone charger in my car. And
That's not a good
hey,
idea.
Amy.
Hey,
And
me.
I go outside, and my next door neighbor has her window open. And like, I'm so socially awkward. Like, I can't even begin to, like, I know, like, I talk quite, articulately and confidently on the channel, but like, if you ever met me in real life, it would just be an embarrassment.
Oh god.
And so she has her window open and she sees me and she's like, "Hey," she's like, "Are you keeping yourself liquored in there?" And I was like,
Clearly, she's keeping herself liquored.
"Yeah, exactly, right." Which
Yeah.
good for her.
Oh
Oh
no,
my
Amy.
god, Amy, so
You feel
sorry.
fine. Oh god.
And I was like, "No." I was like, "Well, I've got some beer." She's like, "Oh, you should come over, take some shots." I was like, "I'm good." It was so awkward. So that's why I rang in the new year. Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh,
I
that's
was asleep by like 10:30.
yeah.
Well, I was just like, I read. Actually, I finished my last book of the year. I have this amazing ability to finish exactly 100 books a year.
Really?
Yeah, like
Good for
every
you.
year. So, and I probably could have overread this past week,
Mhm.
gone over 100, but in my head, I was like, well, I want to start New Year off strong. So I'm going to read exactly 100 and then I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
But I finished my last book and then went to bed and was like, well, that's it.
Nice.
Hey,
Hey,
Heidi.
Heidi. Are you pretty much over your symptoms, Amy?
Yeah. Did you get sick at all or like you didn't even really
Yeah.
notice?
It went through my office this month. So I had
Did
like
it?
3 separate instances where I was basically told to go home because of exposures. Um,
Jeez.
Unfortunately, I never got it, but it kept interrupting my booster
Uh-huh.
because if you've had an exposure within the last 14 days, you're not allowed to get your booster. So on the
Yeah.
final exposure, I decided I was like, I am not postponing this booster anymore. Like I've already had to reschedule it twice because of these dumbass exposures.
Yeah.
And so I just took a whole bunch of at-home tests to make sure I wasn't,
Yeah.
trying to say. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I feel fine after 6 days. I've
I'm
got no
going.
symptoms. I've like clearly I didn't get infected. And so I just went and got my booster.
Wow, Amy, that's crazy. Like it's such a the thing
Oh,
about
it's a
all
good
of
thing you
this
didn't
is
get any symptoms.
yeah, but it feels so up and down, right? Like I think there's lots of people that get like no symptoms. They don't even know they have it unless they get a test because they're told to.
Hmm.
And then there's people like on ventilators still.
Yeah.
And then the booster reaction, like we were saying, Chris, like it's so I know tons of people that I work with who were like totally fine. And I was like flat out for 2 days. And I went to work on the third, and that was a really rough day.
My booster shot was not nearly as bad as the first 2.
Oh, mine were all equally horrific.
Um, the first 2 was like
Yeah.
bad.
Really bad. But our
But then
caseloads here are also crazy. I assume there too.
yeah,
Uh,
raising somebody.
yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
I was
Um,
talking to Chris earlier this week because I was like, if I get this sick with a booster, like, how sick am I going to get if I get COVID? Which appears to be unrelated, but like,
yeah, it's not
kind
really.
of freaked me out.
No. But yeah, it's going bad right now. I'm kind of like, and it sucks too because like I was hoping that in the start of the new year I was going to do a few more like social things because like I'm so bad about socialization. Like if you just like I'm like a dog. Like I have to be taken to the dog park forcefully or something.
You have
Um
to be walked
yeah,
regularly.
yeah. Or else I will just like stay in my house and never talk to anybody. And so I
Yeah.
was like, oh, like I can rejoin my board game groups in January and all this different stuff. And yeah, not really.
No.
So yeah, I hope everyone's staying safe and they're having a lovely start to the new year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the book.
Let's talk about the book.
How do we even want to summarize this book as a little brief little thing to get us started? Because this book was not what I expected in so many ways. It opens up on an experiment gone wrong, which is hard to get into the details about, but ultimately a scientist was going to release these monkeys on a terraformed planet alongside a virus that was going to help them evolve very quickly. And then the goal of this experiment was then to see how the monkeys would develop intelligence, would they create societies that looked like ours, all this different stuff, kind of a, I guess, last ditch effort to save the human race or to put forth our understandings onto a new world. It's sabotaged. Ultimately, everything is destroyed but the virus, which makes its way down to the planet and infects some spiders, who then go
And
on
that's
to
why I
create
lost my mind.
a really crazy, complex civilization. And so the book follows these spiders as you watch how they evolve and change over time and become more complex. And then the book also follows a group of people that are like refugees, I guess, from an Earth
Yeah.
that is no longer habitable on an Ark ship. There's 500,000 of these people. And they use a different word than cryo freeze, but basically, no patience. I'm sorry.
Patients coming through.
Yeah. They're basically cryo frozen on this thing. And some of them are woken at regular intervals to crew the ship. And basically, they're out looking for habitable planets to save the human race.
Because
And
they
also,
know that these exist.
yes, they
They
do
know
know
there
that
was all
these
these experiments.
exist. And obviously, these two are on some sort of collision crash course. I have a lot of feelings about this book. It didn't work for me while I was reading it, but then the more I was talking about it with Jessica, I feel like maybe I liked it more than I think, or at least I find it more interesting and unique than perhaps my enjoyment of the reading experience was. So yeah, what did you really liked it, Jessica? So
I did really like it. And I think this is so often, I feel like when I talk about books, I say something along the lines of like, this book, there was like, this was the concept of the book, and the author didn't really execute it well or failed to live up to what I thought the premise was going to be. And in this case, I think it's almost not the opposite, but I feel like one of the things science fiction does probably better than any other genre is like a book starts with a what if premise, right? So, what if the last vestiges of humanity are trying to terraform a planet and they decide that they're going to like use this nanovirus to evolve monkeys to help humanity when they arrive thousands of years later, and instead of monkeys you get spiders. Like that's kind of it, right? And I feel like the spiders, I was like, oh no. I was joking in the Discord, like we read horror the month before and I'm like, no, this is horror now for me. But the execution was so well done. Like I didn't even care at the times that I was confused about how much time had passed. I didn't care that I didn't particularly love any one character or was rooting for anything. Like I feel like the premise was executed so successfully and in such an interesting and detailed way that like that was the book for me. Like, and it's I almost look at it as like differently than I would look at perhaps other books.
mm-hmm.
But I think it was super successful at what it set out to do.
Yeah, I think for me, the bits I was most emotionally compelled by were taking place on the Ark. And that's because really, although I felt that the spiders were complex and interesting, I didn't feel any emotion towards them. And they're not particularly emotionally driven creatures at all. Like they don't talk
No.
about their wants or desires or anything like that. Like they're all just kind of like hell bent on gaining new knowledge, passing that new knowledge on, and building their society up from previous generations. And so they were interesting to me just because it was interesting to see like how a spider would create a complex
Yes.
civilization.
It
Like
was so well thought out.
what would their infrastructure look like? What would be their means of communication? What what religious beliefs would be established? How would those propagate? All of that was really interesting. How would they go to war?
And it built on each other, right? Like, and I'm sure we'll
Yes.
get here, but to jump in, like a little further down, it's like these social things build and build and build. So when we get to a character like Fabian, who wants to change something, like we can see how thousands of years of society have led to that moment, right? Like it feels really authentic and like clearly well thought out to say,
Yes.
okay, like here's the starting point, and what inferences can you make about their development and then play that out.
Fabian's storyline was the only spider who I felt emotionally compelled by, and by Fabian I mean the original Fabian.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that was how I felt about the spiders. And then with the humans on the Ark ship, I had this opposite feeling where I didn't find any of what was going on the Ark ship particularly interesting. The politics, the divides,
Me either.
all of that just felt very rushed in my opinion. And I think the biggest problem for me with that one was that you're following mostly a character named Holston, who is woken after intervals of sleeping for like hundreds of years. And the way the book is broken up into these different sections, and what happens that as
Sorry, hang on. Let me mute myself.
as the new section opens up, Holston's woken her up. And then it oftentimes feel like Holston wakes up to some catastrophe or crisis going on the ship. And then like it's just info dump to him what's been going on while he's asleep, and then he has to be part of fixing whatever the problem is. And I found that plot structure to be really boring. One, and also I'm just not a big fan of time jumps like that in my stories. I much prefer a real continuous sense of time passing. And that's maybe just personal preference, but that part of the story felt very clunky to me.
See, but that's interesting because the time jumps are critical to how the spider story is told. And I thought that was so successful. But I agree, like everything that was happening on the Gilgamesh was very much like you just drop in and like you just sort of as a reader have to like go along with it and be like, okay, this is what we're doing now. But none of it really mattered. And yeah, the time jumps, I don't feel like they added anything to the story in the way that the time jumps were absolutely necessary to the spiders.
Well, I think that the time jumps were the one thing I felt that was kind of interesting about the time jumps is that it's looking at two people or two groups of people who have ridden time, right? There's an interesting line at one point where I think it's Holston says that no other human than him has really bestrode time the way that he has. And so in that sense, I found the time jumps interesting because you see that the spiders, like they live and die, but they pass their knowledge on to generations as they go. And so it feels like there's this real continuous sense of information, knowledge, and building, right? That they're experiencing over these thousands of years. Whereas Holston, even though he's technically alive for those same thousands of years, his experience of time is so broken up, so jarred, so muddled and repuzzled together that it doesn't really feel like he's been alive for all those thousands of years. Which I felt like that was interesting to me. And I got that. And it all ties back to the title, Children of Time, right? Yeah. These two species that have been so influenced by the way that time has passed. But I just found, as far as the actual storytelling goes, I found the whole thing rather clunky.
Yeah, and I think his constant like getting jarred awake and being like, what's going on?
Yes.
Every time we're like, to be fair, often there would be hundreds of years that have passed and he may not have any clue what's going on.
No, he doesn't.
But as a reader, I think it's pretty clear from jump. They get to the spider planet. They realize there's this satellite in orbit. They're not allowed to land. They have that horrific, talk about horror, that one party that lands and gets like eaten alive by ants.
Yeah.
But then it's like they're going to the other planet and then they're coming back. So I think you can infer like we are somewhere along that timeline. Like that is the plan.
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt a little like you said, in terms of a storytelling style, a little bit clunky and maybe not the best use of the humans.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to make it. I don't know how I would have made it better or more successful, more interesting.
No, I don't either.
And I think the other thing that like I kind of graded on, and I've put book 2 on hold, which is like a companion sequel. I think it's not a direct continuation, if I'm not mistaken. But one of the things that is underpinning the entire like Gilgamesh storyline is that they're the only humans left in the universe. They have to save their species, right? Like that is their driving force. But they don't really know that for sure. It's just that they haven't heard from any other ship. Yeah. So they assume they're the last ones out there. But it just seems, I think by the end of the book, like Tchaikovsky is it felt like he was trying to make a point that like humanity has ruined their home, ruined their solar system. They're fleeing and looking for a new place. But the decisions that they're making are the same ones over and over. They're not making new and better choices, where the spiders have like sort of learned to evolve and make better choices. And at the very end of the book, the spiders make a different choice,
Yeah.
right, than the humans did. Like the stupid monkeys are still awful.
Yeah. Well,
which I thought was kind of cool. Like,
yeah, I did really like the ending, actually. Kind of want to respond to some of these comments because
yeah,
there's a lot been going on. Sorry. Maybe here. Yeah, I think this is how I'm landing on it. Like, I found it interesting. I found the concepts of it interesting. I just don't think I really particularly enjoyed the experience, which is its own thing, you know?
I mean, I think part of it though is like I was saying to Chris, like I read 400 pages of this like in the last 24 hours by accident, or a bit more, even 450. And so I did like it, and I was curious to find out what happened. And like, thank goodness, because I had to read so much of it in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
That I think that changes your reading experience
I
always,
did
right?
read really quickly.
It did.
Yeah. As I was telling Jessica before the thing started, I was like, so much of this book is like philosophy.
Yeah.
And
And just
philosophizing.
ideas, exploring an idea.
Yeah.
Sorry, that is the snowplow going by, which is why my dogs have gone off.
Yeah. Oh, if you see me distracted, it's because my cat knows that when I'm doing something like this, that she has free reign of the house and I can't yell at her. So she's like literally on top of my kitchen cabinets right now.
Oh, what's that? Oh, it was the scene from The West Wing where somebody, sorry, this is so random. Toby pulls CJ out of her office into like this main bullpen area to give her bad news because she screams like, "You think I won't yell in front of people," kind of thing.
Yeah, I kind of feel this way as well. I especially felt like the human characters were lacking for me. I really wanted,
Yeah.
I think my favorite character for me was Lane. And I think part of the reason I liked Lane so much was that she was very competent, assured, and also kind of rude at times. And so there was something about her that was just kind of more immediately interesting to me than someone like Holston. Yeah, the cult people were I don't know, actually. I kind of didn't like that part of the story. And I can't say exactly why, but I just found it all like kind of boring.
That's
Like
the thing.
this,
Like, I just felt like it's almost like we don't have enough happening on the
yeah.
Gilgamesh to really make a good through line. Like, I think
But
there's
that's the
something to
problem
be
with the time
said.
jump. If you had seen how this cult originated instead of
Yeah.
Lane info dumping to Holston about how the cult
Yeah.
originated, I would have found it a lot more interesting to see how those emotional strings got pulled. Whereas the way the book is now, you just like are thrown into this situation and Holston has to kind of figure things out.
But I think I also would have liked a more coherent through line for all of these. So
Mhm.
because what happens on the ship is very much reactive, right? So they get to the planet, they have to react to the situation, and then they have to react to the idea that they're being sent to another planet. Then they have to react when they find what's there, which was also horrific to me. The like gray fungal single super
Yeah.
organism. Oh.
You know, there was a. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it was, well, it's just, it felt like the whole story was very much the ship reacting to their current situation, as opposed to the spiders that had, again, this like evolutionary procession through, like you could see the through line of how a complex society would develop. And I just felt like we could have done something similar with the humans where they had an idea or a philosophy or something that was being developed as well, even though it's the same people, that over time, like maybe in response to these situations, there's a more coherent through line than just the like panic survival mode.
Yeah.
Because I just don't find that very interesting.
Yeah. Something I did find really interesting about the book, and maybe it's a little bit kind of random, but there's at one point a kind of I won't say pandemic, but there's a disease that runs through the spiders.
That was so good, actually.
It's based on a real disease.
Yeah.
So I learned about this disease in like my freshman bio class in college, and I became obsessed with it afterwards. And so the second they started talking about it, I was like, oh, this is a real thing. There's these insects, I think they're in, I think it's the ants that live in the acacia trees in Africa. I think it's these insects that get targeted by it, but it's a fungus that takes over their brain.
Yes, I know this thing.
And it forces them to climb as high as they can climb. Like it takes over their brain, and like the only signal it tells them is like climb, climb, climb. And then once they reach a certain altitude, they just die. And the reason is because the fungus takes over the brain and starts like shooting out from the highest point so it can spread as far as possible.
I heard about this on a podcast, and like I am horrified.
Have you ever seen the pictures of it?
No, of course I haven't.
Oh my god, it's horrifying.
No.
It is horrifying. Like it literally, like you look at it and you're like, wow, Earth is a science fiction novel. Like, it is the craziest looking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay, so you know what? This kind of brings up an interesting point. So one, I refuse to even Google the species of spider that we're talking about here, because when you Google spiders, you don't know what you're going to get back. Like, I need somebody to provide me some curated, non-creepy photos. But I think one of the things that's interesting here, and a point that, like, right, Amy, thank you. Like, I think one of the interesting things here is to pick something that, like, and we mentioned this right before we went live, but like Tchaikovsky clearly has a thing for insects, arachnids. Like, he is super knowledgeable about it, and it's like his thing. And so crafting this as spiders, like, there's a couple moments where the humans are like, I found the moment where they came back to the spider planet after, and they find this big like orbital web thing. That was particularly like gut punchy to me. I found that actually really effective, because I would be horrified if I'm coming up on a planet and I'm like, there are spiders in space. This isn't okay. You know, and I think those sort of horror elements, like when that first group lands and it all goes horribly wrong, and it's very kind of visceral body horror kind of stuff. And the reaction that the humans have, like, we've spent all this time with these spiders, and it's not, you can't ever forget that they're spiders, but we get to kind of be in their society and in their culture, and like we have evolved as a reader along with them, right? And so I don't think we quite see them in the same way, but then when we get it from the human perspective, they're literally like squashing spiders.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's actually, it was a kind of effective like juxtaposition to do, to like make you care, to have you, I think a lot of us ended up rooting for the spiders at the end, but to still have that human perspective and that visceral reaction to these giant spiders that are doing all of these like traditionally creepy spider things. Like, I think that's like an effective storytelling thing, right? To be like, these things that we find creepy, there's this whole conversation near the end of the book about whether they're sentient, right? Because there's a group of them, they all assume no, right? That they're just like following orders, they're like bio-engineered weapons, right? Because they don't know about the society and stuff. And like, I just think that's an effective thing to do, is to kind of turn the tables. And if they were monkeys, we wouldn't be having this book at all, right? I think making it kind of like an arachnid based thing is such a different vibe, and it's kind of the point of the book, it turns out. But
I agree. I lost my train of thought. Darn it. I had something.
It's okay. I'm just picturing I was like giant evolved spiders. Like, this is my name.
The part where they got to the space and saw the spider webs, I found particularly horrifying as well. And also I found it interesting that, like, I guess, like, you know, I shouldn't be surprised because the virus was designed to force them to evolve a certain way. But I did find it interesting that, like, their aspirations was to go to the sky.
Mhm.
Like, in the same way that, like, human aspiration is to go to the sky. Like, there's something about that I found kind of an interesting thing to think about, that he posited that as something that's almost like universal to self-awareness, is the desire to reach out.
There's probably an interesting parallel too between, because they know that the messenger is in the sky, right? That's their god. And so I think that prompts that need. But I don't know that it's any different than humans, right? We've had this, like, I remember as a kid growing up, and I think a lot of people find religious figures as like some mysterious god in the sky, right? You can go back to like the ancient Egyptians who worship like the sun and the moon, like things in the sky are things that we worship. And so there's this like underlying compulsion to get closer, and with that comes greater understanding, theoretically.
So the messenger, Kern.
There were some actually really funny Kern moments, can I just say?
Right?
Kern, you've got spiders on you.
She's like kind of nuts, but also
crazy.
I couldn't tell if she was physically alive in that thing, or if that was just the computer.
I got the sense at the end that she was still alive. Like, I don't know that she could have functioned without the computer systems, it felt like, but I
guess my question is, like, what is keeping the biologics alive for 1,000 years?
I have no idea.
Which I guess isn't the point of the book, but I was like, wait. And also, can I tell if she had been alive, was she also kind of going in and out of cryofreeze the way that the people were on the Ark ship? Like,
or is it this permanent, like, semi-aware like, state? Like, not off or on? Because at the beginning, she sets it up to, like, she uploads her consciousness, and then she's going to be put like to sleep until the spiders, the monkeys,
Mhm,
theoretically, but actually the spiders send back those mathematical codes, right? Because at that point, they're evolved enough that she needs to be woken up to interact with them.
mhm.
And then I sort of lost the thread on where she was there. Yeah, that's Heidi's got the same point. Like, I think I
Yeah,
got a little bit confused in some of that stuff
yeah, that's
because
where
there's
I was
clearly
like,
a body
"What?"
at the end.
Yeah, I was confused as well. I was like, "How much of this is her?" Yeah, it was weird. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if I
But
have a good answer to it.
there's also some of the humans were like super old, right? By the end of it, like there's
Yeah,
clearly
but,
not
like,
all natural
this
as
is
we
the
know it life.
this is the part of the book that really confused me, was you understand for a little bit about, like, how often Holston is woken up and how much time passes for him in that
Mhm.
stasis period, but everyone else, I was very confused by. Like,
Yeah.
how long was Lane out of stasis? Like, it's confusing, like, has she been out of stasis for hundreds of years? A few decades? What is the lifespan of these people if they're not cryo-frozen or whatever they
Yeah.
are, right? I found that really confusing, and I guess I did want that to be a little bit more concrete, just because the book is so important in terms of its relationship to time, that trying to figure out, like, how much these people had seen was, like, bizarre, because, like, technically Holston is in years older than Lane at the end, but then he's also clearly physically younger than her at the end of the
Mhm.
book.
I
Um,
stopped trying to I
but
stopped trying to keep track of it, to be honest. Like that was my strategy, was just like, oh, we've got Holston again. Okay, cool.
yeah,
Whatever. Like I don't care how old he is because I just couldn't keep up.
yeah. Patience, please. Don't make me get up.
I love
She's
that her name's Patience.
It's literally the most oxymoronic thing because she is an actual devil. I love her, but she is like, my parents are constantly, because I'm always like trying to not discipline her. You can't discipline a cat, but always telling her to like get off of things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, "She's such a good cat." I was like, "Guys, she is a sweet cat. Like, she's
Yeah.
very nice and friendly. She is a little devil,
Yeah.
aren't you?"
She's him to ruin it.
Yeah, she says, I think their lifespan was normal.
See,
I think
I
Lane.
got the impression they were longer, but again, I
Yeah, I
stopped
guess I
paying
did
attention.
too.
I don't know, it's
Yeah,
weird.
I
The other
mean,
thing,
I
there,
get I agree that it felt like they were aging normally when they were out of stasis, but, like, I didn't understand how long they had been out of stasis for. Like, I don't know,
yeah,
maybe that's weird,
because
like,
there's points where they're like super old.
I know, right? Like, to the point where you're like, "What in the heck?" Like, when he she
Yeah,
just
but like not
when
alive old. Like there's one where like the one person's like gray, like their
yeah.
skin is grayish, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah, she is named after Patience from Realm of the Outer Her original name was Phoenix, and I didn't like that name, to be honest. And so I had to rename her something that I liked, which sounded similar to Phoenix, so she wouldn't get too confused. So I picked Patience. Um,
I think okay. Wait, one of the things I want to talk about that I just kind of rolled along with, but I would want to talk to some sort of like evolutionary biologist about
mhm.
is the technical capabilities of the spiders and the ants in particular, because all of a sudden we have ants running like heavy industry for the spiders and they're like producing refined metals,
Mhm.
and then the spiders somehow manage with the tools that they can, like either they're like silk webbing, whatever, they have developed enough stuff to like make it to space.
Well, it makes a
And I'm
little
like,
bit of
but
sense for
how?
me because ants are really strong, like
Sure.
relative to their body size, right? So if you
Yes.
had an ant that was like, half a meter
Size.
long, the
Yeah.
way these things are, kind of makes sense that they'd be able to like have the strength capacity and stuff like that to like mine ores and stuff.
But at one point, don't they say that they don't have like fire? They don't have like combustible. They don't. Oh, they also haven't invented the wheel at one point, right? There's that
Yeah,
comment is made. I
but
just feel
that's
like
because
logistically, this is very tricky.
there's not much need for them to have the wheel, right? Because they
How do you move all the metals around? Like just have the
well,
ants
remember
haul them?
the ants had that long distance, or the spiders had that long distance too, remember? That they
Yeah,
traveled along the webs on?
yeah.
So I kind of got the idea that that was how they were moving goods and services, was
I
through a
got.
network of those.
It just seemed there were points of the book where I'm like,
Oh
I'm
no,
not going to Google this,
there's
but
definite points in the book that beggar believability. Like,
yeah,
I mean, and not just like obviously it's sci-fi, but I mean like in terms of like its own internal logic.
But I have to
Um,
like, I guess part what I'm thinking is more that like Tchaikovsky clearly like does a lot of research, and a lot of the ideas and concepts that are built in the book and are explored, I think are coming from reality, right?
mm,
Like I think he's doing research and is like, oh, that's an interesting thing that spiders are capable of. Let's take this to the nth degree. And so I'm a little bit fuzzy on like how much of this is actually possible and how much of it is really just like, okay. Like once they start getting to space, I was a little bit like, okay, we have sky nests with like rocket launchers on the back.
hmm
It seemed a little odd to me, is all.
Oh no, I mean I agree about that, but I mean I don't have a good answer to it. I don't know
And
how
I'm not
ants.
Googling. I'm just not Googling any of this. It's fine. I'll just live in ignorance.
We
And
can ask Quora how would a ant civilization develop to mine
the
metals?
ants also super freaked me out. I got to be honest. Like it
I
wasn't just the
loved I
spiders.
loved the ants,
Oh,
especially because the way that like Fabian took over them, that was so cool.
that was a really cool piece of, um, like
But
not sci-fi, but like science-based
yeah, I guess
fiction
more because of how much I liked Fabian as a character. He was my favorite spider.
for sure.
Um,
I think
but
partly
yeah,
because the other ones roll, right? Like we don't have one Portia, we have
yes.
generations of them. And it's, I think, smart storytelling, like just literally structurally for readers to use that
hmm
to make that an effective like through line for us, because there's no way we would be able to keep track of all these spiders.
hmm
But to have the same kind of there is a Portia who fills this role in the community be consistent, I thought was really like actually really smart.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, I guess overall it was just one of those books that I don't know. I feel like I've read. I feel like I've never. I feel like the spiders and the ants were the most interesting part, right? But I feel like I've
Mhm.
read better stories about humans leaving Earth like that. Like, for example, one that isn't like an arc ship of hundreds of thousands of people leaving, but is probably more emotionally resonant than this book is, and it's only like 200 pages, is To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
I
which
think in
has
terms of generation ships, yes, better
okay,
stories elsewhere.
yeah, but in terms of like evolutionary sci-fi, which actually one of the blurbs on the book talks about how it's like the best evolutionary sci-fi in years. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I know any other evolutionary science
Yeah,
fiction novels to compare that against. But so this was my first
agreed.
experience of that. And I did find that bit to be the most interesting, although the least emotionally resonant.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. I like Heidi was we were kind of agreeing up further in the comments, but like I think that is what makes the book super successful. Like I am willing to say the human bit not as successful, the characters sort of didn't care. There's a lot about this book that I'm kind of like didn't follow this, didn't care about this, whatever, but like I still come out of it feeling like it was a really well done book because maybe it is exploring something we don't see very often, right?
hmm
Like you're saying, I do read enough sci-fi to get a sense of like the genre and kind of what is out there. And I agree. I don't know that I've read much else or any evolutionary sci-fi before.
I don't read enough sci-fi to really know how it fits in with the rest of the genre, to be honest. And I was thinking after I read this that I wanted to try and read more books that had that generation ship thing going on.
Yep.
Um,
Because I
but
love that concept, right? There is a great, I don't know if anybody has read Cloud Cuckoo Land yet by Anthony Doerr. And it's one of those, like, you talk about like Jessica Kryptonite, like a book that is set in the past, the present, and the future. Sign me up.
was it
Like the
good?
new, I loved it. I read it in a couple of days, and it's a big book at the
I
cottage,
have
and it
such
was just,
I have
I
such a
loved it.
prejudice against it because, and this is awful. I've never even read All the Light We Cannot See, right?
Oh, I
But
love that.
I guess like my thing is that like it's one of those books that's so everywhere, and like is like the ultimate book club books that
Here's the,
like
Chris,
I'm
I'm
just like
with you.
I don't want to read it. Like you know
I
what I
put it
mean?
off for years and years and years, and I can't remember what. Hey,
Hey
Zan,
Zan.
did your partner get their booster? I think that's where we were waiting on. Um,
Oh.
Chris, I didn't read it for years because I owned a copy and I thought the same. I'm like, oh God, this book is like a Costco book everywhere and like blah, blah, blah. I read it in a single sitting, all 500, six
Oh
hundred
my
pages or
god.
whatever for a readathon, for like a 24-hour readathon or something. And I loved it. 5 stars. He's an incredible writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll
But
have
they
to.
have a like a kind of future generation ship component that I won't spoil the details of, but like I love that as like a thing in sci-fi. I think it's such a cool thing. It just like wasn't super successful
Yeah,
here.
that was the least. Yeah, it'll be interesting because like the book does end in a way that you could see a sequel happening, right? So I'll be interested. I might end up reading the sequel now that we're talking about
Okay,
it.
so I just looked it up because I wanted to read the blurb. So it says, okay, oh my god, my giant dog is trying to climb into the window seat, but also the ring light is right there. This is a disaster. Henry, you're not going to do that. No, no, no. Please stop. Okay. It says, long ago, Earth's terraforming program sent ships out to build new homes for humanity among the stars and made an unexpected discovery, a planet with life. But the scientists were unaware that the alien ecosystem was more developed than the primitive life forms originally discovered. Now, thousands of years later, the Portids, so we're back to the spiders, and their humans have sent an exploration vessel following the fragmentary radio signals. They discover a system in crisis, warring factions trying to recover from an apocalyptic catastrophe arising from what early terraformers awoke all those years before. So it is
So
a
it
direct
is probably
continuation.
That
Yeah,
is
from that last
that is
epilogue.
that is exactly where I was thinking the sequel would go. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, yeah. The more we're talking about it, I might end up reading that.
I put a hold on it last night. Like I had the 90 pages to go in this morning that I had to like
It's
make
out
sure I got
already,
up
isn't
for.
it?
It's out. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm gonna read it. I put a hold on it, and the library bought them because I asked them to. Um,
Okay, Amy. This
yeah.
comment here about the story where they. What is this from the book? I don't remember this.
I know.
Do you-
No, no,
or
no,
is
no,
this,
no. This is from the Ken Liu. Read up.
oh, the Ken Liu. Okay, I missed a
Some of the
comment.
short stories we read by Ken Liu were more successful, she thought.
Oh, I see. I see it. Yep. Yes, I agree. Totally agree. I'm on a Ken Liu stan kick right now because I'm reading The Grace of Kings, so I'll always agree that he's great. Yeah, so yeah, I definitely want to read more books about generation ships. I might end up reading the sequel to this, but this is just ultimately, as a reading experience and an emotional experience, not the most successful for me, but very interesting.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I find interesting about like my reading habits is trying to remember books after the fact, right? And so there's a lot of books I read that I feel like in the moment, like I just finished an Ian McEwan book, one of his earlier ones, The Comfort of Strangers,
Mm,
which is like it is going to slip from my memory very quickly. Like
yeah,
it's not memorable to me in a lot of ways. It was kind of cool to sit down with for a few hours and there's kind of this eerie dread that runs through it. There's like action that happens at the end. It's very Ian McEwan. But that book isn't going to stay with me. And I think the thing about this book is like, yes, there were no characters that I was like really attached to. And there weren't a ton of super emotional moments, although there were a couple that a little like shock to the system. But I will remember this book for sure. Like I am not forgetting the spiders anytime soon.
yeah. I would agree. I would
And I
say
think
that's
that makes
definitely
it a
true.
little
But
bit
I
more
think that's partly
successful to
because of the
me.
shocking imagery of the spiders.
Yeah, well,
I
for
guess
sure.
more than anything, like kind of
Yeah.
this idea of these incredibly advanced spiders. I think the one scene that I actually did find myself getting a little bit emotional by was when they could hear the screams of the scientist as
Yeah.
the spiders were attacking her. Um,
Mhm.
I did actually find myself getting a little bit like emotional by that, which is surprising because I didn't find her that compelling of a character.
No,
But
but the
then
one
to
thing we knew about her was she was scared of
yeah,
spiders.
I know.
So when
It's
it's
pretty
happening, like
good.
I did find that jarring because I would be the same. Like I get that I'm one of those people that like find spiders gross and they freak me out for no like good reason, right? It's just they have
I
too
think
many body parts.
I think they're one of the least frightening bugs.
Oh, I think I said this in the Discord too. I was talking to a friend about this book and I'm like, oh my God, dude, my book club book is spiders. And she was like, oh no. I'm like, I can't read this right now. I'm going back to my Ted Bundy book because that was less creepy to me than the super evolved giant spiders were. Because I get that it's not super rational or whatever, but there were some moments where like that moment in particular, because I would have been her, like I'd be actually terrified
I used
about this
to
whole thing.
I used to live in an apartment that was cockroach infested.
Oh, I've
And
never
let
had
me
to deal
just
with
tell you
them.
something. After you have lived in a roach-infested apartment that you were too poor to break your lease on,
Oh God.
you will never be afraid of something like a spider. Like, let me tell you. Like, I find
Yeah.
things like that way more horrifying. Like spiders, I'm like, ah.
You know what the thing is about spiders? And I think, well, there's two things. There's a lot of insects, right? They move in unexpected ways at times and they move quicker than you think they're going to. That freaks me out. But half of the thing with spiders, like where I live in the world, like there's tons of spiders outside every summer. It's that they show up in places where you're not expecting, where you're like going to reach down and do something. And all of a sudden you turn up and there's like a giant spider hanging in a nest above your head. Like, oh,
The only
that
time I ever get
it's
like, really
the
creeped out by
scare.
spiders is when they have their babies on their back.
Oh, yeah, no.
That's always horrible.
Yeah, no, it's, oh, I don't.
Moths are cute.
Moths are kind of creepy. They don't scare me, but they don't bother me either. Like,
I think they're adorable.
yeah, they kind of do. They're not often in the house, I guess, is the other thing,
Yeah.
where, like, of all the things that will be in my house in the summer months, there are flies and there are spiders.
They're just like kind of dumb and just want to be with shiny things. I get it.
I
I
get it.
stand.
I'm also distracted by gold foiling
Yeah.
on books. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Henry's just staring at me now. Yeah, I don't
Anyways,
know that I have much else to
I
say.
don't
Like,
either. I kind
I
of
liked it. There's certainly things that will not stay with me, but the book will stay with me. And I think I also, one of the things about this for me was that this was my first time reading Tchaikovsky, and like he's got a ton of
yes.
stuff out. I knew
Oh
he
my
had
god, so
fantasy
many. I
out,
knew I did the same thing last night after I
right?
finished it. I was like going through his entire bibliography, trying to figure out
Yeah.
like if I was going to read another one, what would it be? And I think I probably will read The Tiger and the Wolf, which is one I already own it.
Mhm.
Um, which is his fantasy book about these different clans. There's something about the way it's described that reminds me of the aesthetics of Clan of the Cave Bear, but I'm not really sure if it's
Yeah, if that's
actually
fair. Yeah.
prehistoric.
Hmm.
But there's something about the way it's been described that reminds me of that.
But I think that's the thing.
So
Like for me, it was successful. It was certainly successful enough as the first book by an author to continue on with the
ew,
author, right?
Amy, gross. That's
Ew.
not a thing here, but that I can
No,
think
we
of.
don't have enough moths for it to really be a thing.
No,
Ew, the residue.
that's nasty.
Mm,
Um,
pass, pass. So yeah, but I was saying to Chris, like he's got another. I'm gonna look that up too. It was like Shards of Earth, Shards of the Earth, or something. Is his
yeah, I think it is called Shards of Earth.
newest? And I have a galley copy of that, which I
He
remember
also has
nothing
Cage
about.
of Souls, which I think is another science fiction.
Oh God, there's
He's
so
written a
many.
ton.
Like a ton, and I'm interested now. Like I'm interested in
I don't
what he
know.
has to do.
It's funny because like he's written so much, but I feel like until a few years ago, I had never heard of anything by him.
This feels very. Sorry, I'm reading the
Sam,
blurb for
that one's
Shards of.
also bugs. Are you itching for more insect stories? I mean, I do think that one has. That's probably the one I'm least likely to read, just because I don't think that he like emotionally compelled me with the spider storyline. So I'm like, I don't know his ability to make me care about bugs. But I think the Tiger and the Wolf is where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna see how this goes. I'm gonna see how this goes. His stuff always sounds interesting, but I guess it depends on. Yeah, it just might be too. It might be too many bugs for me.
Yeah, he's written so many books, like shocking amount of books.
One of the Goodreads comments for this book is literally talking about how his output rivals Sanderson as like a pro in
Yeah,
his
he's written a
paper.
ton.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would, aside from the sequel to this book, because I feel like I know what I'm going to be getting in that book, I might try one of his other series at some point and just see. But I'm not like,
In a rush.
I'm not in a rush because I think if he can't get away from insects as like a plot device, I might be out.
I don't think his other ones are that bad as far as that's concerned.
Hope.
I have heard very mixed things about Cage of Souls. I've heard like even people who like his other stuff have not loved that one. So I think maybe I would steer away from that.
There's also just so many books to read, guys. There's so many books out there to get to.
I've not counted my own TBR lately, but I think I'm around 500.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
help.
I
I'm
mean,
not allowing myself to buy books for at least the first quarter of this year.
I literally watched your book haul. Like I literally just
I know,
watched
but that was
about
for December. I'm saying for the next 3 months.
I know. Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm having a bit of a crisis about buying books because I haven't been buying books, and so my shelves are very much a reflection of like 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And I work at the library, and like we buy whatever. Like if I come across something that we don't already own, I recommend it for purchase, and then we buy it. So I have no
Rub it in.
need to put money into books, but I also feel insane. Like I have a whole library room. Like a room in my house is the library.
Ugh,
But if I'm
the
not updating
dream.
the shelves, then it just feels like an archive of past buying decisions.
You should like, I don't know, let yourself get like 10 every 4 months or something.
Yeah, but like to what end? Because I'll read them and I might not ever read them again, or I might hate them, whatever. And again, I could have done all of that at the library and put that like however much money into, I don't know. I need a new roof next year, so that's an exciting time in my life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna have the self control to like never buy books like that. Even I have
I didn't
no
think I would
self-control
either.
whatsoever.
I just fell out of it, and then it became like a I'd rather spend my money on something else now. But
But so you don't just go to the bookstore and let the whim take you?
partly
Wow.
because of COVID the past couple of years, but
Yeah.
also I just don't go out very often. I'm sorry. Did I step on your toes? I'm
My
sorry.
favorite thing in the world is just going to half price books and just like seeing where the mood takes me.
Yeah. Yeah, I would 100% overthink this. Like last year I was saying I kind of want to like I do want to buy books, but I only want to buy like my favorite books and then have them. But then I'm kind of like, but I've already read them. Like, will I reread them? Maybe, but also maybe not. So what's the point in owning them then?
But you don't find it like fun to look back on the books you've owned on your shelf? Like
Oh
you don't
yeah, for
find that
sure I do.
yeah.
But just at the cost of like, getting my driveway repaved, I'm not as into it.
Oh, you see, I don't apply logic to these financial decisions.
I am a budgeting. I have a lot of spreadsheets because I need to, but also I find it helpful.
I'm like, money, I let my heart speak for me.
I don't know if you looked at the price of a new roof recently, but I've learned to take some
Oh
of the
no,
emotion out of these decisions.
trust me, I understand.
No. Um,
Oh, you've got your copy already. I've got to get mine still.
I've got my battered, like mass market paperback. Like, look how gross this is. Library copy.
What are all those things in it?
I have to break down the book for the Discord
Oh, okay.
things. I have
I
to.
think you like already read all that and like tabbed. I was like, whoa.
No. I'm 40 pages in.
I've not even started it yet, but I really want to start it like ASAP, just because like obviously Jacqueline Carey, love.
I'm gonna be interested to see what you think.
Do you not like it?
Here's the thing. It's going to be a very quick read. I think it's going to be a fun read, like in a very like kind of pulpy mass market paperback kind of way.
But definitely different
The
from.
writing feels unrecognizable to me.
Oh,
As somebody who has read and loved Jacqueline Carey, and there's a reason we picked this book in like a genre that you and I don't read heavily in.
yeah. That's why we picked it. It's because we love
That's why
her,
we picked
but
it, right?
yeah.
But there's some real cringe opening lines, and I'm just
Really?
gonna rush by. It's urban fantasy, and she's I
Yeah.
think got to conform to the genre a little bit and some of the expectations.
That's shocking to me because I find like as far as a sentence by sentence prose writer,
Mhm.
she's got to be in my top 3. Like her way with words is unbelievable in
Put it all
the Custodial
here.
series.
See,
That's
I need to find. Okay, hang on. And this is the thing. There's some books that I don't care if the writing is not beautiful, right? So I don't know how to pronounce this town name. I'm going to take a stab. So it was an idyllic evening in Pemcoet, the little resort town I call home. A mid-July Michigan evening, soft and warm, not too muggy. One of those evenings when the sunlight promises to linger forever.
I
And
don't
wait
think it's that
till
bad.
I hate the little resort town I call home. Anywho, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's lots of like commentary to herself, and then wait till she sees her hot cop partner person.
Ooh, okay. I'm ready for it. I'm down.
Yeah, like I'm sort of gonna love it, I think, anyway, just as like a fun, quick reading experience. But I am not gonna probably end up thinking that this is on par with what I have seen her do.
That's very
Right?
surprising.
This is gonna be a different
I was
thing.
definitely expecting her to like elevate the genre a little
That's
bit,
what we
which
were
sounds
hoping.
very
Like,
pretentious,
literally yeah.
but that was like I don't know, like that's so weird because if you've not read her Kushil books, you wouldn't maybe you would just think, oh, it's
Yeah.
just urban fantasy, right? But maybe you wouldn't recognize that how different it is from what
Yeah.
she usually does.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I feel like the Kashiel, like, because I've only read the first, but in that book, and I read, was it Starless was her
Yeah,
standalone fantasy? I felt like the writing verged on, it sounds like such a trash thing to say about like genre fiction, but it verged on literary fiction in
yeah.
like how important the way it was written is communicated,
Oh, it's so elevated. Like
right? And this is not.
the her writing style in those books is just like sumptuous. Like it is so rich, and it feels like you're like eating a feast of like
This is
words.
not a feast.
That's
This
so
is
funny.
like some, I don't like, what's a good, like, this is like junk food, you know? This is like you go to McDonald's and you get something ridiculous and you get both the hamburger and the nuggets because you have to get both. You can't just pick one. And
Mhm.
like it's fine and it's enjoyable in the moment. But I don't think you're ever gonna like leave and be like, wow, that McDonald's was the best meal of my life.
Wow.
This
That's
is how I'm predicting this will go. And Amy, yes, sometimes I do like to touch all the books and feel nice on the inside. I do. But it's still it's really hard to justify. Like if I have other things I need to be saving money for, it is hard to justify. Yeah, a trashy fun time also. Yes. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. And I think it's going to be somebody's got their snowblower out. I don't know if you guys can hear that. We got a lot of snow in the night.
Listen, I'm all down for it. I actually think I'll like it, but I'm very surprised by the stylistic difference between that and
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll like it too. Okay, see, I wouldn't describe Sanderson as McDonald's, so I could see why maybe they are mad at you.
I describe it that way.
I know. You know what? Nobody orders that
You
much
know
at
what?
McDonald's.
Let me be clear.
Sanderson's pumping
He's
out, it's like an 8-course meal
he's like Taco Bell.
where you get a lot. You get
You
a
get a lot.
lot, but it goes through you real quick.
Yeah. And afterwards you regret your decisions.
Can I tell you, I have put like 100, last year, I put it like 140 hours of audiobook time into Brandon Sanderson.
Oh
And that
my
was like,
god.
you know how many books that was?
Aren't
Two and a bit.
aren't
Two
like
and a
all of his
bit.
books narrated by Michael Whalen?
There's
Not
three
Michael Whalen, Michael
narrators.
Kramer, sorry.
There's three
Brain.
narrators in the Stormlight Archive
Well,
ones.
there's Michael Kramer and then there's Kate Redding.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle that much of Michael Kramer and Kate Redding in my ear. Like, there's something about their like I like Kate Redding's other work in different books, but like her work with Sanderson and Robert Jordan is rough. Like the delivery.
I don't mind them. I'm with Sanderson too. They're so friggin' long that I just kind of like pop in my AirPods and like I saw that comment. Just pop in my AirPods and like roll with it. Sanderson has got to be one of the most divisive authors out there too, though, for fantasy fans.
It's
like
so hard for me because he's one of the few fantasy authors besides like besides George R. R. Martin, where like when people find out that I read fantasy, like people that are not like book obsessed, they're like, "Oh, have you read Sanderson?" Because they really like Sanderson. You know what I'm trying to say? I've had this experience with like coworkers and stuff, and like I don't in real life want to like go on a book critique, but I'm like I didn't like it, and then I sound like a bitch because I'm just like telling people that I didn't like a book that they clearly
but it's
love.
like one of 3 fantasy books they know and love.
Exactly. And I'm just like, oh god.
Yeah.
Every time that conversation arises.
Yeah, I think for me, he's very much becoming a kind of like comfort read where like I'm happy to just roll along with whatever he's doing in Stormlight Archive in particular right now. Like I'm happy to just follow the story and see where it goes. But do I think it's the best thing out there? No. Like it's never going to change my life. There's parts of the story I already have forgotten, but
I'm going to be really mean. Whenever people talk about how his books are so good about mental health representation, I literally don't know what the hell they're talking about.
I don't know what they're talking
about. Like everyone talks about it, like how it moved them and all this different stuff. And I'm like, what is actually wrong with you? Like, what are you like? This is I'm baffled. Like I can't.
I've not noticed any. I just haven't noticed any mental health representation in his books.
It's like every single like PTSD and how it helped them get through it, and I'm like,
okay.
I hate to be an ass, but like what?
I mean,
Like
if it helped you, then
yeah,
whatever. Like, who am I
exactly,
to judge?
exactly. If it
But
was therapeutic for you, but like it's the amount of people who say that that I find like shocking. 'Cause I'm like,
yeah,
what are you talking about?
yeah.
I found absolutely none of that in those books.
Yeah, I'm with you, Heidi. I'm the same. Like, I don't think his writing is groundbreaking. I don't think, like, but I like the books. I think they're like, I look forward to Sanderson, and he's got so much out too that like it's kind of nice to have an
I
author that you can come back to and be like, there's more. Because
I
with Robin Hobb, like, I'm realizing I don't think I read a Hobb last year, which is bizarre to me.
oh my
And
god.
but hers, I don't want to race through because I am worried about running out.
Yeah. So I wish I liked Sanderson. And you know the reason I wish that is because it's actually getting kind of rare for authors these days to write these big hulking epic fantasies. Like there's
Mhm.
not that many. Most
Nope.
of the big fantasy titles coming out like right now are like one, not to be like stepping on territory where people are getting angry, but a lot of them sound like YA. And when I
Mhm.
read them, I find that the style and the presentation of the book reminds me a lot of young adult fiction.
Yeah.
They're not very long. They're not very epic in scope. And so Sanderson is someone who's writing these huge, like behemoth stories.
Mhm.
And being one of the few out there that's carrying on this tradition, like I want to like him so that
Yeah.
I can have that, but I
Yeah. Yeah.
don't.
It happens.
And I find that like I think that's one of my big like frustrations with it is that like I wish I liked it. And they get such beautiful artwork. God.
It does. I
That rhythm
do. Yeah.
that Rhythm of War book cover, like, when that came out, I literally
Yeah.
thought to myself, like, "Maybe I should reread all of them
Just so I
just
can
so I
enjoy
can
this
have
cover.
that, like, gorgeous cover on my
Yep.
shelves."
Yep.
Oh my
I'm so
gosh.
excited for Thomas, by the way, here. Hang on.
Oh, Thomas, you're in for it. You're in for it.
This is okay, but this is my thing. So Hob books, I don't read them at a pace that I read other books potentially. Like I really read every sentence closely in a way that I don't always with other, especially fantasy books. And they're so good. I
Like,
don't want to
oh,
binge them.
I literally am on the same thing 'cause I'm rereading the last trilogy right now, and I reread Fool's Assassin, like, 2 months ago, and, like, I got done with it, I was like, "Oh, I wanna continue on to,
Yep.
whatever the next book's called, I think
I'm so
Fool's
far behind.
Fool's Assassin? Assassins? I can't remember, there's so many titles. Whatever the second one is. Fool's Quest, that's it. I was like, "Oh, gotta read Fool's Quest now," but then I was like, I've put it off because I'm so don't want it to
Yeah.
be over, like, and that last trilogy is so good. Like, I
And this is I
forgot
don't
how
care.
good it is.
Like I like rereading and I'd be down to reread them too, but like there's going to come a point where I'm not going to have any unread Robin Hobbs. And right now I still have like lots. Like I've only
Yes.
done the first two trilogies and then the first book and the third. So I
Okay,
have lots
yeah,
still
you
to
do have
go.
lots. Oh, man, they're so
I'm
good,
going to
and
read one this year. Like, I'll read one.
um, I will say too, her Soldier Son trilogy is really good. I do not
Yeah.
understand the hatred that series gets because I think it's phenomenal. Like, it's actually probably my second favorite trilogy by her.
Interesting. I think I
Like
have a friend that's read them.
for me, it's like Live Ships is probably still number 1, and
Live
then
Ships
number
is really good.
2 is probably Soldier Son because
Yeah.
like, that book, like, went directions that I was not expecting. Like, I
Oh,
think I
that's
started
fun.
it off and I was like, "Oh, I get where this is going," and then, like, by book 2, I was like, "No, I don't know where this
I
is
don't know where
going."
this is
Like,
going.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yes, Zan, it's
excited.
so good, and, like, every time like, it has a 3.3 rating on Goodreads, and I'm like, "How? What is wrong with you people? It's so good." Like, I'm baffled, like, Forest Mage in particular, that 2nd book, like, I got to the end of that book, and I was like, "My life has been transformed by reading this," and it kinda sucks because, like, you can't talk to a whole lot of people about it because
No,
not
because
it's not
it's
like the
common.
Around with the Elderlings, like, everyone's read it and you have a whole, like,
Yeah,
fan discussion, but, like, oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah. You have to read Amy's comment.
I was going to say, I was oh my gosh.
Just
I was
picture you like on the floor, just like
I was literally, like, visiting my parents when I was finishing up Assassin's Fate for the first time, and I was, like, at their house, like, on the couch, just, like, reading the last 100 pages, and my dad was like trying to talk to me. I was like, Dad, I was like, I cannot be spoken to right now. I'm like, imagine I'm
The
just not
fragile
even here.
state. Yeah.
And I was literally just sobbing on the couch, like full on, like losing my mind.
Don't tell me, because that's a series I'm starting, right? Like I read the first one.
When you're starting the middle one, you're starting uh the Tawny Man.
Yes, yes, sorry. Tawny Man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tawny Man's really good too. And the ending of Tawny Man will have you feeling some things.
Well, that's what I've heard. I'm worried.
Yeah. I like Rain Wilds as well. A lot of people don't like the Rain Wilds. I don't understand the Rain Wilds is like either. I feel like the Rain Wilds, I think people just have like different expectations for them because they're Realm of the Odorlings books. The tone of the Rain Wilds is very different. Like
Mm.
people have compared it to YA, and I wouldn't go that far, but it's definitely lighter than the others.
Hmm.
It's like you know what it kind of reminded me of is, and I don't know why I make this comparison, but it reminded me a little bit of like the Amelia Peabody mysteries.
That's so random.
I know. Like it had that kind of like spunky, like it has like a spunky academic in it who like is making her way um on an expedition. I don't know, like I liked him.
Yeah, seriously. uh,
But
I've got things to steam clean. Don't you worry.
okay, well, yeah, Life Ship
Yeah,
is just
agreed.
it's like one of those trilogies that like you read it like you just can't believe how good it is. Like, and
Yeah,
you wonder to yourself, like, obviously Hobb is very popular, and I'm never going to be someone that's like Hobb is underrated because, like, clearly she's like a
but
huge
I
name.
think she is sort of.
Yes, exactly. Like, I feel like she should be in the same sentences as like George R. Martin. Like,
Yeah, you know when like the same authors get blurbed over and over again. This is the new like
yes,
Rothfuss,
yeah.
Abercrombie, like whatever. Hobb is never in that
How
list.
and how in
And
comparison to
how?
like because like Rothfuss has written 2 books, one of which was honestly not as good as the other.
Well, and I think part of it comes back to like maybe the way we can think about this to like self-soothe is like nobody's writing like Hobb. Like
No,
nobody is getting that like the next Robin Hobb. Like there's no next Robin Hobb coming.
no. I mean, she's it's, it's
She's
like one of
so
those
good.
things where like it's just shockingly good. Like I don't like every time I reread one of those books, like because I try and pace out my rereads a little bit with them, and every time I pick it up again, I'm like, every time I just like read a page, I just think I
Yeah.
wish every book I read was
Yeah.
this good.
Yeah.
Like,
And they're just not.
no,
But she's got it all, right? She's got the writing, the character building, the world building. Like it's
plot,
just
like
all
it's
there. It's all
everything.
there.
It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And
Yeah.
it's honestly like if you Thomas, if you're liking Assassin's Apprentice as much as you did,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
just
you
wait,
got
because like
just wait.
that's probably one of my least favorite books by her, and it's like still
I
a
really love
5-star
it.
knockout.
It's got that like kind of spot in my heart as like
Oh,
the
I
first thing I
know.
read, and like you like the book starts and you're like, oh,
I know.
you know, it's like the start of something. It's like when I watch, I don't know, the first episode of like an old Star Trek series or something. Like the first time we see Picard, I'm
Yeah,
like that episode is terrible, and yet I'm like, oh, it's the start of the thing,
yeah.
right?
I 100% agree, especially like
Yeah,
reading him as like a little kid again. It's just like
yeah,
devastatingly wonderful and beautiful and everything.
because you know what is all coming
I
later,
know,
right?
and you
It's
know, like
this
what's down the pipeline. Oh my god.
just a little boy in the stable.
My wee little Fitz.
Goodness. Okay, we
All
should
right.
stop.
We should stop.
I
Yeah,
gotta go
we've got
shovel some
Jack
more.
and Carrie next month, and
Yep.
I'm gonna be really interested to see what I think of it now because that's very surprising. I think I'll probably still end up liking it because I
I
like
think I
pulpy
will too,
stuff.
honestly.
It's just gonna be very different from what I've expected
Yeah. Urban fantasy is really not my thing. So,
from
oh, Chris, I've lost you a little bit.
Oh,
Oh, there you are.
we're back. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know what you missed,
Okay.
but hopefully it's
It's
all good.
okay. I think we'll be okay. My
Yep.
dog is losing his marbles.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. All right, well, you have to keep us
Yeah.
updated, Thomas.
Yes.
All
Report
right.
back.
Yes, report back. All right, so I hope everyone has a great start to the new year, and we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.